Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world. I'm Dan Marty.
And I am former WWE superstar Al Snow.
A brand new Wrestling Insider special edition is now.
Wrestling fans, we missed him in Tampa, but have no fear. Demolition Axe, the masked superstar, one half of the greatest tag team in WWE history, returns to MWF Studios in downtown Melrose, Massachusetts for two big nights. Saturday, May the 22nd, Sunday, May the 23rd. Axe will be taping historical episodes of Wrestling Insiders along with live shows featuring cyber autograph signings. Demolition Smash signed a limited number of photos when he was with us in Florida. Axe can add his signature to give you a beautiful collectible. Head on over to bostonwrestling.com to pre-order yours now and keep wrestling legends working.
Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world. I'm Dan Marty.
And I'm Mr. USA WWE Hall of Famer Tony Atlas.
The road to WrestleMania has begun. Wrestling fans are looking to add to their man caves. You got to see what we have in the eBay store.
Check it out.
Support Wrestling Insiders and keep wrestling legends working on eBay. Get this WWE NXT TakeOver War Games 2020 11x14 limited edition autograph poster signed by everyone on the event, number 23 of only 100 made. Includes signatures from the Undisputed Era, Johnny Gargano, Damian Priest, Tommaso Ciampa, Timothy Thatcher, Io Shirai, Tony Storm, Rhea Ripley, Dexter, Loomis, and more. Comes with authentication hologram on the back of the poster. Also comes with mystery autographed 8x10 and an on-air shout-out from WWE Hall of Famer Mr. USA Tony Atlas on Wrestling Insiders at your house. Get it now. Boston Wrestling Sports and the MWF explodes into a new year of unknown with professional wrestling content galore, and we need you to join our family. Every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. after we review the previous night's Monday Night Raw, it's Wrestling Insiders at your house with the unpredictable WWE Hall of Famer, Mr. USA Tony Atlas. Wednesday nights after WWE, NXT, and AEW at 10 p.m., you never know who's going to show up on Wrestling Insiders Special Edition. Every Thursday night at 10 p.m. after our NXT and Dynamite review, it's Marty Jannetty's No Holds Barred Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll journey through the 80s and 90s on Wrestling Insiders Party with Marty. Friday nights after the lights go down at the Thunderdome on SmackDown, it's John Cena Sr.'s Wrestling Insiders Fabulous Fridays. Plus, look for classic clips, bonus live episodes, pay-per-view watch-alongs, and more. If you want early, ad-free access to all of our Wrestling Insider talk shows, our acclaimed studio shoot interview DVD library, and to help keep wrestling legends working during the worst of times, for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, join our growing family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. Expect the unexpected in 2021.
This is Mick Foley.
This is Harley Race.
This is Shelton Benjamin.
This is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
This is the Monster Abyss.
And this is Daniel Bryan.
This is JBL, and you're watching the MWF.
Be there live.
All right, wrestling fans, welcome to another Wrestling Insider Special Edition. It is the Wednesday Night Delight as we bring you rotating legends throughout the year. We still don't know what the heck is happening with all the darker version of Shrek himself, Mr. USA Tony Atlas. We're not sure what his long-term prognosis is here in the Boston Wrestling MWF.
Yeah.
Wednesday night, we always have special guests. And every Thursday night at 10, though. I mean, you got to put the women and children to bed.
Okay.
For Wrestling Insiders Party with Marty.
Oh, do
Because
you?
you never know what Annie's story may come up. You made plane ride stories.
It's true. Marty has a lot of stories because he has a lot of experience.
He has a lot of experience.
A lot of experiences.
And then Friday night, we sit down with the man that maybe has the best moss in professional wrestling, whether a work or a shoot, John Cena Sr.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. John Cena Sr. I remember him. He's a great guy.
Great guy. Very charitable individual, but sometimes when the lights get a little too warm in the studio, I think the glue shifts a little bit. You know
Maybe.
What I mean? But
yeah, it's too much to pay.
it's too much.
It's rather expensive.
I love it. I love it. All right, wrestling fans. I'm sure, Al, you probably get hammered nonstop with Attitude Era type questions. And as we continue, no?
Not necessarily.
What do most people ask you about in interviews?
Where's head? You know.
Where's head?
Yeah.
All right.
And if you want to know their They're right now at the hotel bar getting drunk. So,
Really? Okay. Like, almost like one of those gut milk commercials.
well, it's more like got alcohol.
Where Annie
Now,
said
next thing you know, we're going to be out at the strip clubs all night because they're such whores, you know.
and Annie got ass, but
Well,
that goes without saying.
That was Annie. So
she wore that under her blazer at the Hilton.
she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, but
She would get discounts on hotels, though.
You know, you can't go wrong with that.
Not at all.
You can't go wrong, even if her sister does have a little genetic. Apparently,
Yeah, we don't know.
Marty is still trying to figure it out.
Right.
We're going to get one of those 23andMe DNA tests and do it on the show. And Quincy's going to do the Maury Povich-like reveal if Gina's offspring is little Marty. I think that would be a tremendous piece of video.
Quite honestly, I would pay to see that.
Quincy screaming.
Yes.
If it is the baby or not. But the fans have
He
awfully...
screams because he can't hear. He's got hearing aids.
And they almost, I don't know if you've ever heard them.
They don't quite fit in his ears.
Right, because they're used.
Yes.
And they kind of
Does he still ride his Honda?
Yes, the 1978 Honda-Matic.
Yes.
And he was waiting for his stimulus check that he screamed at me about.
Right.
Because he needs the money to upgrade. Every year he has to do upgrades on it.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot of TLC.
It's a 78 Honda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honda-Matic.
Right.
So...
those are pretty rare.
They are. Well, that's why he bought... Believe it or not, he used one not too long ago. Someone found one on Craigslist out in Weston, Mass, and the poor thing fell apart and like a broken kid's toy on Christmas morning. He was heartbroken. But Quincy will be back on the Honda-Matic soon. For you fans that don't know Quincy, maybe we'll have him do like a special intro to your episode.
I hope so.
On the Honda-Matic.
I love you, Quincy.
Quincy, you are loved, even though you continue to speak with Al on that hidden camera every Thursday night at the studio.
Stop telling him that.
He does. He enjoys his conversations with you. He wishes your wife well every week.
I know, he does.
He wishes you holiday greetings,
Because
sometimes months in advance.
Yes. It's because
It's Labor Day and you're getting a Merry Christmas on the wall.
I know, but that's because he's a sweetheart.
Just picture that right there. The fans can't see it, but see that above the door?
Yes.
Picture that about 3 or 4 feet higher. And that's how he
and
communicates
he's talking
with
to
you.
that, yeah.
Yeah. As he's trying to get you out of the fried chicken business.
I need to see him, and I need to talk to him.
All right, wrestling fans. Again, we are big on the chronological order of things. You know, the big thing to me is people that knock WWE and so on. WWE bought the video libraries they bought. They can create the pieces they want to create.
Sure.
They own history as it is to them. But that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of great guys that will never have those 3-disc DVD sets.
True.
They didn't have tremendous careers, tremendous experiences, meet interesting people in interesting places.
Yeah.
So that's why I think talk shows and programs like this have exploded, especially during coronavirus time when there's just been so much repetitive stuff on television where it's been hard to make new movies, new TV shows. And,
True.
And nowadays more and more people, they're on the internet more than they are on regular television in certain demographics. Mm-hmm. So I know you've probably seen that yourself with Ohio Valley Wrestling. I bet there's as many people that see it on online platforms as television platforms.
Yeah, I agree. And luckily, I mean, we're on, in about 150 million homes nationwide and around the world between Roku and Fight TV and, Amazon Prime and Amazon Fire. So we're in a variety of different ways, both linear and broadcast and streaming. And so and it's important that we try to make it as accessible as possible and, in as many different outlets as we can to, build an audience for the brand.
Making it as easy as possible, no matter what platform or what device that you may want to use, you have a way to access it.
Someone can find it and hopefully enjoy what's being done and build the audience that way.
Well, I know the OVW numbers continue to grow and grow and grow. We mentioned it during our live autograph session, in addition to all of your great work with turning OVW into an institution, not a wrestling school.
Well, it's been an institution for over 30 years. I mean, it had a great run.
Well, as far as
a developmental for WWE and, and then again for Impact Wrestling and so it's had a long and illustrious history.
But as far as it being accredited, that has been within the
well,
past
as
few
far
years.
as being accredited, I mean, we're the only actually accredited by a state office of proprietary education as a trade school for professional wrestling in the world.
That's quite a statement.
It's quite a statement. It took about almost 2.5 years to accomplish. It took a lot of work and a lot of time. They don't hand that out to just anybody. And what that means is that, because the State Office of Proprietary Education oversees all secondary education, for a particular state. And that means universities, colleges, trade schools, and to be designated not as just a wrestling school or like it's a, karate training or martial arts or boxing or anything like that. We're doing what we're actually really doing, being recognized for what we're really doing, which is teaching young men and women skills to pursue a vocation as a professional wrestler. And, having that accreditation substantiates the standards and the high level of professionalism that we use when we're training these young men and women, to give them more confidence in believing that they will acquire the skills to be able to capitalize on any opportunities they may get in professional wrestling. So,
why were you the guy? Now, there's probably hundreds, if not, I would hate to think there are thousands, but at least hundreds of wrestling schools. Why were you the guy with your OVW family to be the first to go this route and develop it this way?
Well, I think anybody could have done it. I think the reason why, quite honestly, is that used to, in professional wrestling, we had our own standards. We held each other accountable. And you were held directly responsible, which I still, to this day, hold myself, because, in the old days, when you brought somebody into the business, they were known as your kid, meaning you were responsible for them. And if they did bad business, that reflected on you, which then affected your career and the way you fed your family. That's why guys were very reticent in the old days to train, break in new wrestlers into the business, because they ultimately were held responsible for somebody else's actions. That changed, and it became more open, much more available for anybody that could, and not just to get into the wrestling business, but for anyone to open up a wrestling school. And, my wife is a licensed masseuse, and from my viewpoint, she had to attend a state accredited school. She had to be taught by a state accredited teacher. She had to complete a certain amount of required hours of training. And then she had to complete a certain number of hours of residency, which is direct hands-on experience, supervised experience, before she could even attempt to obtain a license to be a professional masseuse. Now, the likelihood of injury, of bodily harm, receiving a massage is there, but it's minimal. Every time you as a professional wrestler enter a ring, there's a chance that you will suffer a life-altering injury or a life-debilitating injury. That's just a fact.
Or worse.
Well, or you could die.
Right.
And what motivated all of this was there was a young man in Oklahoma, which is a commissioned state, you have to have a license, and he was on a show. He was barely trained with someone who was poorly trained, and they gave him like a spine buster. He hit the back of his head. He ended up having brain swelling. He was in a coma for like 4 days, and they had to pull the plug, and he died.
Wow.
And that occurrence is increasing every year. More and more young men and women are having these types of injuries and either being crippled or dying because there are no standards. Quite honestly, there are no standards as far as professional wrestling training. I find it insulting and absurd that, all you have to do is, in some states, take a physical, pay your money, and you get a license to be a professional wrestler. And there should be, since we ourselves as a wrestling business aren't doing so, I thought, we should have a state agency institute that. I went to the board of directors of the, Kentucky State Wrestling and Boxing Commission, implored them to create a training license to where you got a training license, and then once you completed a certain amount of required hours by a state approved trainer at a state approved school, and then completed a certain number of hours of residency, you could then apply and take a test to be a licensed professional wrestler. I don't think that's ridiculous. I don't think it's that much to ask. But of course I was, turned down. So I took it upon myself, and, with my business partner, Chad Miller, and we went and we purchased OVW from Danny Davis. It just kind of all fell into place, inadvertently, really, because that wasn't the plan. And we began to start through the process 2.5 years ago, almost 3 now, to go through what the necessary steps to receive accreditation as an actual trade school for professional wrestling, because it's not like boxing or mixed martial arts or karate or kung fu or anything like this. You're being taught skills to pursue a vocation, to earn a living and build a career as a professional wrestler. And as such, it should be treated accordingly. No different than if you went to college to be an accountant. You want to be taught by someone who, is going to give you the knowledge or, benefit of their experience to prepare you to take advantage of opportunities to pursue a career as an accountant. And the same goes for as a professional wrestler. And, I don't, too many people, and I'm not bagging on anybody, look, it's not my circus, it's not my monkeys. So only people I care about is what I deal with. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, too many people assume that they have a certain amount of knowledge and experience, and as such, they can now, go rent a building, buy a ring, and they can, create a wrestling school, and they can now teach people. And to be quite honest, they don't have the real knowledge, because I don't care how much information you have about a particular topic. That's the problem that in the society we live in today, that everybody has access to information. And they assume that because the more information they have, the more real knowledge they have about a particular topic, and nothing could be further from the fact. In order to have real knowledge about any topic, you have to have both information and a commensurate amount of experience in that particular situation to generate a real understanding equating to actual knowledge of the topic. And let's face it, just because you read something on the internet and you garner a little bit of information does not mean that you have any real experience in that situation that now gives you the knowledge to expound your opinion like you're some kind of an expert on it. And with professional wrestling, if you want to have goals to reach, like being in WWE, which everybody wants to be, which for the wrong reasons, because they all want to be there just for the sense of being famous, or you want to go overseas, then you need someone who's had that experience, that's been there. Even if they've been there and they've made mistakes, then they can at least, because of the information and the experience, now have knowledge to transmit to you to where you can avoid the pitfalls that they had, and you might have a better chance of success by going to WWE or going overseas. But you're never going to learn that from someone who's never done that, never had those experiences. You're going to get someone who's going to teach you a very, very paint-by-numbers approach to the art of what professional wrestling is, because it is an art form of storytelling within the context of a competitive situation. And this paint-by-numbers 7-step process that everyone takes now is absurd, and it doesn't work. And because at the end of the day, once you walk through the curtain, you're the artist. And you're allowed to do whatever you want to do, as long as it's within the context of trying to beat your opponent and not be beaten by your opponent. You're free to do anything you want, any way you want to do it, to convince that audience that you're actually out there as a prize fighter trying to win and not lose. And you're only this approach that is being given, this simplistic, paint by numbers, step 1, step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 formula is only taught by people that don't really have a genuine understanding of what it is they're really trying to do, which then breeds a generation of performers that don't understand not just the wrestling business, but the entertainment and business in general, which is that now they all think that they're entitled to get paid because they showed up and they wrestled, which you're not getting paid to wrestle. You're getting paid based on how many people showed up to see you wrestle. That's the biggest difference. And your job is not to go out there and perform. Your job is to go out there and perform in such a manner that then the next time they see your name on a poster, they are more motivated to come back in greater numbers to see you. And if that doesn't happen, you're not worth the money you're being paid. Period. I don't care how good you are or how athletic you are. You're nothing but a performer. You're not a worker, because the real term, the real definition of a work is a lie. It's a sham. It's a con. It is to make someone believe something that's not true. And nobody can tell you any different. Nothing about wrestling has changed. The one thing that was fake about wrestling in 1902 is the one thing that's fake about it in 2021. And that's just the finish. And your job as a professional wrestler is to go out there and not make them believe in what you're doing, is to make them believe in why you're doing it, the intent behind it, that you're using it to beat the other person, to win the match so that you get the winner's purse, more money. Just like in boxing, just like in MMA, they aren't any different, period. And you, with the lack of standards, the lack of having some kind of accountability within wrestling, we now have lost touch with that very intrinsic part of the art of the story. And now the wrestlers themselves, the performers, are not working in any manner, and they're now simply performing for each other, because the one question that was always asked for the first 15 years of the 39 years I was in the wrestling business was never, how good was your match? Nobody cared, because they knew that if your match wasn't good, you wouldn't be on the card. Period. It was, what's the house? How many people have shown up? Because that was how we generated an income. Because the more people that were there, the better we were able to feed our families. Bottom line, it wasn't about having a 5-star match or a critical acclaim. It was about how many people showed up at that building to watch what you did. If you pay attention to any of those documentaries that are done on WWE or anywhere else, and the wrestlers from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, you listen to them and the only thing they'll talk about is that, oh, so-and-so and so-and-so wrestled each other. And then you'll hear them talk and they'll go, yeah, I wrestled Dan and we drew money. We sold such and such a building out. We had them standing on their feet. You listen to anyone from the mid-90s on that broke in, and it's, oh yeah, Dan and I wrestled. We had a great match. It was great to wrestle with him. We did these spots. The people were crazy. They were so excited. Not saying anything about how many people attended. They don't care. And that has been lost because we don't have that being taught going forward, because we don't have the requirements, the standards for someone to open up a wrestling school, to have a certain type of and certain amount of experience to then teach the next generation. And so I felt that the way that I could correct that was, one, to go to the commissions who didn't want to listen to it. And I'm not bagging on the commission. I get it. You know, it's all about economics, and they didn't want to institute those type of rules because they were afraid they were going to lose a lot of licensees, which meant that they were going to lose a lot of money. But what they didn't see was, because they have a very short viewpoint, is that if you raise the standards of the training, you in turn raise the standards of the performer, and you raise the standards of the performance, which means that the audience now gets more of a return on their investment of time, money, and effort to go watch the show, which means that they're more likely to show up in greater numbers, which means it gives the promoters more capital to run more live events, which means that then the state gets more tax money from those events, which encourages better and more qualified athletes to want to be professional wrestlers, to then get an increase as far as licensing is concerned, that then increases the amount of live events and etc. And their coffers get filled even more. But they took the short viewpoint and were greedy and would rather keep things the way they were. And I was like, well, then screw it. Danny Davis
Penny
was
smart,
wanting,
dollar stupid.
and Danny Davis was wanting to retire. And it just happened that we were in the right place at the right time, and we bought OVW and, took it upon ourselves to try to change that direction. Some would say that we're not being that successful, but, and some would argue the point that we are. It's a long process. It makes it more difficult when talent watch other people being rewarded and considered successful doing the opposite of what it is you're trying to teach them. But this means that I've got to explain things and more thoroughly and be more logical and be more committed to the viewpoint that I'm trying to impress upon them. And make this clear that I don't, as far as the performer is concerned, I don't tell them what they can or what they can't do or how much they can or cannot do. I don't care, but I do care if it's done in a manner that goes counterclockwise to the very thing that we're selling, the thing that we've always sold, which is to allow you to believe that win and loss have a consequence. That they're out there trying to do their very best to compete, to get ahead. And at the end of the day, I know the horse shit that everyone tells them, the wrestling business changed. They're not, they know it's fake. Well, guess what? They've known since 1920 it's fake. That's the truth. Okay. All of my family, I love them dearly, but not one of them is a Mensa candidate. Okay. And not one of them was ever a professional wrestler. I, in 1976, proclaimed I wanted to be a professional wrestler. And you know what every one of them, including my dear grandmother, said? Why do you want to do that? That's fake. Now, how did they discern this? How did they know this without ever once doing it themselves? Because we all knew, everyone knew, that professional wrestling was predetermined. Because that's the only thing that was fake about it. Everything that happens in that ring is quite real. You as your character is you, just with the volume turned way up. Vince McMahon is Vince McMahon. Steve Austin is Steve Austin, just with the volume turned way up. That's why they work. It's not a character. It's a gimmick. It's who you really are. The wrestling moves, all the bumps, all the moves you see, everything is quite real. The pain is quite real. It's the intent behind it that is fake. And that's what you're selling to the audience. That's what you're trying to get them to buy. And that's what you're trying to get them to believe. And that ain't nothing new. They've done that since 1901 till now. You sell the who and the why. And you can make whatever excuse you want to say, and that's old school and this is new school. And for everyone out there who wants to give you that horseshit excuse, I ask the same 4 questions. If the wrestling business really has changed, like people say, I'll agree. Okay. Then tell me this. What you're telling me is that no longer are we selling the finish. We're not doing that. We're selling the moves. We're selling your athleticism. We're selling your spots. That's what we're selling. People don't believe in heels or baby faces. They don't believe that you're trying to win. They just want to see excitement. Okay. Then explain to me, why am I paying for a referee to be in the ring? What purpose does he serve? You told me the audience isn't there about the wins and losses. They're not there because they believe in that. They're there to see your moves. They're there to see the high spots. They're there to see the athleticism.
Why not just go for 20 minutes and do moves?
Why not?
And I think, and I don't know if you'll agree or disagree, but I think a great point you've made is nowadays you watch a lot of wrestling in just about any promotion, and it doesn't seem like the objective is to win the actual wrestling match anymore.
It's not. So question 2. Why am I paying for commentators to call your match as if it's an actual sporting event in a competitive situation? Or that they're talking about it as if at any moment in time one of you could lose and there's a consequence to that loss. That you're not going to make it up the ladder. You're not going to win that match and move closer to being the number 1 contender for one of the titles. Which brings me to question 3. Why am I spending thousands of dollars to buy these championship belts? And apparently they don't mean anything because you're not accomplishing anything. They're nothing more than a prop and useless at that because your wins and losses don't matter because you told me they weren't paying to believe in that in the first place. And here's the last question. Because if you can answer this, then I will 100% agree with you. It's completely changed. Okay? If what you say is true, it's changed. We're no longer selling the finish. We're selling everything else. Okay. Then why is it you get a boo-boo face as a wrestler when I ask you to lose? You're telling me the audience doesn't care. Why the hell do you? Why do you walk around and your lips all hung out and your shoulders are slumped and you're telling people, he's burying me, he's burying me, yeah, I've lost, 3 matches. It doesn't matter. They're not there to see you win or lose.
Not the athleticism.
Exactly. And you're an amazing athlete, so apparently it ain't going to mean 6 or 1 and half a dozen other. So why do you care?
I'm going to tell you this. I'm not going to name the name because I think you and I both like this person very, very much. But someone very high up the rank in WWE told an active WWE talent not too long ago that the wins and the losses don't matter at all.
They don't. They don't.
And it's because
no.
I mean, I don't think you have ever
The wins
seen,
and losses don't matter in the sense that you can get over without going over. Okay? They don't matter because that's not what we're selling. We are selling the finish. Mm-hmm. We're selling that the wins and losses have a consequence. But in the bigger picture, like you can get beat. Like there are guys like Tommy Dreamer in ECW never won a match, but he was one of the most over guys in ECW.
Fair enough.
So
but I think as far as
what that guy, your executive, was telling an inactive talent was that what I just said is that it's changed now. The audience doesn't pay to see somebody win or lose. The audience pays just to see the personality or see the moves and the athleticism. That ain't the case. They still care about whether or not somebody wins and somebody loses. It's no different than boxing. It's no different than MMA. The only reason you ever watch a boxing match or the only reason you ever watch an MMA match is because of who's fighting and whether or not one of them will win and one of them will lose. Period. Wrestling ain't no different because boxing is a prize fighter. MMA, prize fighters. Wrestling is supposed to be the same. And guess what's the one thing that can potentially be worked in both of those other 2 sports?
The finish.
Yes. You can go out there and hit each other as hard as you want. It's the intent behind the hit. It's how you hit and where you hit that might lead you to possibly win that fight. That is what's fake. The same in professional wrestling. At any point in time, if guys really know and are trained correctly, they can hook a guy and they can go into business.
Quick, yeah.
They can go sideways and they can go into business for themselves. Simple as that. It's the intent that they're trying to convince the audience, not each other.
When did the intention change and why?
It changed because of when there was an older generation that were departing the wrestling business And there was not that, there was a lack of guidance from that older generation, and fewer and fewer places for younger talent to come in and work, truly work. And when you came in as a wrestler in the early days, you never wrestled, you never worked with anyone that had the same or just slightly more experience than you. You always worked with people that were 5 or 6 or 7 years in the business, been working 7 nights a week. And you didn't come in and go, oh, I want to do such and such a spot. You just came in and said, hey, sir, I'm working with you tonight. Sure, kid. We're going to do blah, 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 or not this, just listen to me. And that's what you did. You just listened. And you got to get a feel and a sense and an understanding of how to physically, through your body language, through your facial expressions, through your timing, to convince an audience that you were trying to win and not lose. It got those people left. It created a vacuum that was filled with wrestlers that were of similar experience now wrestling each other. And without that guidance from a senior generation, they looked to some kind of direction, which then came from, they're still fans, but they're well-informed fans, who wrote critiques and newsletters of what they liked and what they thought was best. And because the wrestlers were looking for some kind of direction and praise, they started to work towards trying to get that from the fans. And the fans don't have the real inside the ring experience, so they don't really have knowledge. They just know what they like. And as a result, it slowly developed into what it is today, where, and what also happened was no longer were a vast majority of the younger talent able to go and do it for a living. They were now doing it on a weekend or once monthly basis, or a couple of months here, a couple of dates a month, but they also had another job. So it was no longer was their livelihood tied to how much the attendance was. And a lot of the older promoters were now leaving the business, and a lot of younger ones were coming in who didn't know quite how the entertainment business works, which was, hey, I'm going to promote you. I'm going to create a platform. It's a business relationship. They treated it more like it was an employee and employer type of situation of, well, you're going to perform a task, a service for me, and I'll pay you a certain set amount of money, where that's not the case. You know, it's based off of, if I give you a platform, i.e. a wrestling show, you utilize that platform to where next time when I put your name on a poster, more people are going to be motivated to come see you. Now you're worth more money. Simple as that. And that started to change and, you know, become different. And that led us to where we are now.
Which is a scary place, in my opinion.
Well, it is a scary place, because if you lose the things that are intrinsic about something, then ultimately it will end up changing. And if it changes, what once was will cease to be. And the professional wrestling business has been in existence for over 100 years. And the reason that it has is that, again, there were certain intrinsic things that were passed down. There's always an evolution of style, you know, from the 1900s to the 1920s, for instance. You know, it was called, they were grunt and groaners, where they would grab a hold and just, you know, hold it for long periods of time. And when the Indian wrestlers, the Palwani wrestlers, came in to the United States, they brought in chain wrestling, where it was switches and reversals and counters and, you know, takedowns, and so the wrestling became a little quicker paced and linked together, which, you know, and then when Buddy Rogers came, he was the father of sequencing, which is what we call modern day high spots, where they link together, you know, you sequence 3 or 4 or 5 moves together. Prior to that, a wrestler would just one slam, or a slam and an elbow drop, or, Buddy was the first guy to really do tackle, drop down, leapfrog, hip toss, counter into a headlock takeover, and that sequencing was a development. And wrestling will always develop, will evolve, but I think that they've confused evolution of wrestling these days to it being departed from because regardless of the evolution in the past years, it always remained trying to sell the concept that what was done in the ring was to attempt to achieve victory, win. And if you were the other person, it was to sell that you're doing everything you can to not lose. And that now that's not what it's about. It's about selling what's done as opposed to selling why it's done. And without standards, without proper experience, as far as wrestling schools are concerned, that degradation is going to continue. You're going to have the blind leading the blind. And literally it's become where, I open up a wrestling school, I teach you, you're with me for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Now you feel like you've gotten to a certain point. Well, you've never been to WWE. You've never been overseas. But now you think you know enough and have enough experience. Now you open up school. Well, now you start training, another guy. Well, now you and him, you're training. Well, you have a fallout. Well, he's been with you for a year. Now he thinks he has enough. He knows enough. He's never been to WWE. He's never been overseas. He's never been on a different platform. So he now opens up a wrestling school. Now he starts training guys. Well, now the guy with him's for 6 months. That guy goes, hey, I know what I'm doing. And he goes and off and he opens up a wrestling school. And it just gets worse and it gets worse and worse.
And you and I, we have a lot of fun. We joke around. But
yeah.
One thing I take very seriously is the training.
Well, certainly.
It goes into what we do because it reflects, when it's done wrong, it reflects poorly on everybody. And I think that's why you're at a point now when I think there are so many more wrestling fans that love wrestling that aren't engaged in it anymore than there are that do.
True, because again, the performers aren't selling the who and the why anymore. They're selling the what. And the reason they are is because they're trying to more impress and appeal to each other than they are the audience that's paying to see them. And that's a fact, because that's why they so meticulously verbally go back and forth and call everything they do, which you can call as much as you want. But then they go away and they visually rehearse in their heads so that they don't make a mistake. That's not for the audience because the audience doesn't know if you made a mistake. There's no way they ever know you made a mistake unless you clearly make it look like you weren't doing it in an effort to try to accomplish one of the two things, either to win or not lose. The only people that know you made a mistake are the people backstage. So that's why you're so scared. That's why you're trying to rehearse everything to ensure the fact that when you walk back through the curtain, somebody doesn't call you on something they saw. That, oh, yeah, I saw you blow that spot. Well, these people out there didn't see that. They just saw something go shitty and it looked ugly and fights get that way. Things don't always go perfect. That's just the way it is. But backstage, they do. Now you take a knock. Well, these people ain't going to pay you to see you. The people backstage ain't going to pay you. And to quite be honest, they're not watching your match anyways. You're trying to impress people that ain't watching it because they're worried about you're going to watch theirs. So they're back there rehearsing their match. The last thing they're worried about is yours. So really who you're really concerned with is that person who's going to write that critique. You're worried that a fan that somebody who's never done what you've done is going to be able to criticize you for your attempt at doing what you were doing. That is probably one of the dumbest things. That would be like me going to a doctor if I'm sick and telling the doctor how to treat me. I've watched every medical show there is. Doctors, House, ER, St. Elsewhere, you name Dr. Kildare, you name the medical show, I've watched it. Yeah, I even go on the New England Journal of Medical Science and I Google my own symptoms. But if I were to go and tell a doctor how to do anything to treat me, if the doctor listens to me, he's an idiot because I'm not a doctor. And if the doctor does anything different than other than tell me to shut up and do what he tells me to do, then he shouldn't be treating patients. And if you're a wrestler and you're worried about someone who has never done what you've done, telling you what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad, then you're a fool. Complete and utter fool. But unfortunately, the majority of the performers are now rewarded for performing to please each other and those very same people, as opposed to working towards the mass audience. And that's the upside down business we're now in. But I'm doing what I can in OVW to try to right that ship. And, you know, I only worry about OVW because it's my circus and my monkeys. Anybody can do anything they want. I'm not bagging, again, not bagging on anybody doing anything they want to do the way they want to do it. Feel free. You know, that's their business. I don't care. I do care because unfortunately, nothing within the wrestling business lives in a bubble.
Right.
It all affects everything else. But if I can do what's within my purview and do what I can control, and maybe, hopefully, if I can get the talent to really be on the page that I need them to be on, we can serve as an example that what they used to think was old school and was outdated and doesn't work anymore, quite honestly, still does, and draws money and may actually inspire others to follow our lead and take back the art of physical storytelling within the context of a competitive situation for professional wrestling.
Wouldn't that be something? Huh, in 2021? Wouldn't that be something?
It would be, you know, but, you know, we'll see. I mean, and that doesn't mean that it's got to go back to just you grab a headlock and you lay on the mat.
No, not at all.
It means that you've got to work much more sophisticated. You've got to work much more intelligently, because the one and singularly thing that has changed about professional wrestling is the level of sophistication of the audience. Professional wrestling has been and always will be a mirror of society. And society today is much, much more sophisticated than it ever was even 10 years ago. And as such, you've got to be able to really pay attention to the details and to really invest in who you are and why you're doing it, to convince, even if it's just for 5 seconds, to make them question and go, I know this is fake, but these guys look like they're really trying to win. You know, that's the endeavor of any form of entertainment, is to take you away from what you know and make you buy into what's being presented.
It's like when Lesnar is in a good program. You
You
question what you see for a little bit.
It's, yeah, you know, and question, did he go off script? Did he kind of go into business for himself? And and it takes on a different connotation. And that's the same goes for any wrestling match. That's the goal you're trying to achieve, you know, and that's honestly what an audience wants. They know. When you go to a movie.
When they went to see Rocky,
they went to see Spider-Man.
You're right,
It's not a documentary about a teen who shoots jizz out of his wrist and sticks to a wall. Okay, we know that's not real, but we can, for the time we're in the movie theater, forget our troubles and be involved in that world. You know magic's not real. You know it, okay? It's a work, okay? But if you're a good enough performer, the people in the audience can, for that time they're watching, go, oh man, how do you do that? I don't get it. Oh, it's amazing. Same with professional wrestling. But you've got to endeavor to allow them to believe in the lie, and the only lie is that you're actually out there trying to win. That's it. Simple as that. And that was the motivation behind acquiring OVW and creating some kind of standards, some kind of bar to be set, to induct these young men and women into professional wrestling. So, you know, hopefully over time we can, you know, do so and build a business and build attendance, one, to the point to where we can survive, and two, to where we motivate others to take the lead and and mimic what we're doing.
Unbelievable. I am getting the cue in the back from our good friend Dave Willis. Great episode, Al. It went a little off course from where we wanted it to go, but
I know.
sometimes that makes for the better episodes. OVW is certainly, if you are interested in truly becoming a professional wrestler, that you should certainly go out of your way to, even if you have to leave the comforts of home in a wrestling school that isn't, 15 or 20 minutes from the house. If you really want a true career in the king of sports professional wrestling, it is a place you should look to.
And if you do, listen, don't lie to yourself, okay? The only advice I give anyone is, number one, never lie to yourself. We lie to everybody every day. That's what we do. Just face facts. Be honest with yourself, okay? And here's one thing you have to be honest with. If you want to live a life that others don't live, you have to be willing to do things that others don't do. And to your point, this is not going to be 15, 20 minutes from your house. You have to make a commitment. You have to make a decision. You have to make a choice. And you have to make what you think are sacrifices, which really aren't. They're just steps that you have to take to achieve your goal, period. And if you want to do it, do it. If you don't fool yourself. Go get a regular job. Live your life. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you do want to do it, trust me, in order to live a life that others don't live, you have to be willing to do things that others don't do, period. And if you're going to half-ass it, stay home.
Stay home.
Stay
Please.
home.
Please stay home. Please stay home.
You're just wasting your time and ours.
But wrestling fans, the good thing is if you don't want to invest that much of yourself in a professional wrestling career, there are great talk shows like this here on Boston Wrestling, MWF Wrestling Insiders, and hopefully later this year, live events back in New England. If you're enjoying the premiere of this episode, don't forget the premiere chat is going on the right side of the screen. Leave us your thoughts on what Al has had to say tonight. The super chat button is always open. Don't forget to tip the bartender. If you're watching after the fact, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. We're always very interested, I should say, to know what you think. We'd love to have Al on more.
I can't wait to hear what you think.
Well, yeah.
Because I live based off of other people's opinions.
Well, we need to know what they like. We need to know who they want to see more of.
He's giving us the Iggy.
We're
He's
getting
like,
the Iggy.
just
All right.
quit.
For my good longtime friend Al Snow, I'm Dan Marty. We'll be back all spring and summer with great Wrestling Insider content. Again, check out OVW Wrestling. It is available on so many different platforms, on television, online, satellite, anywhere. You have a screen, you can find it. Till we speak again, you and yours. Be well, stay healthy. Good night.
World Wrestling Federation was live at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden in New York, New York, Monday, May the 19th, 1980. In the opening contest, Rick McGraw beat Jose Estrada. Larry Zbyszko won a 16-man, $15,000 Battle Royal, earning a title shot at the next MSG event. Larry Sharp with the win over Frankie Williams. Larry Zbyszko defeated Dominic DeNucci. Tor Kamada victorious over Johnny Rodz. In the main event, WWF World Champion Bob Backlund retained the title over WWF Intercontinental Champion Ken Patera in a Texas death match. This was the Wrestling Observer Match of the Year for 1980. Gorilla Monsoon beat Baron Mikel Cicluna, who replaced Hulk Hogan. Bobby Duncombe with the win over Rene Goulet. And Mr. USA Tony Atlas, Polish Power Ivan Putski, and Pat Patterson defeated Peter Maivia, and WWF Tag Team Champions the Wild Samoans in a best 2 out of 3 falls match. If you are in New York City live, share your memories in the comment section below. Use the link in the description box to keep Wrestling Legends working in our eBay store and on our world-renowned Patreon streaming service so we can bring you more interactive superstar shoot interviews to relive the good old days of professional wrestling. Check it out. Boston Wrestling Sports in the MWF explodes into a new year with professional wrestling content galore and need you to join our family. Every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. after our Monday Night Raw review, it's Wrestling Insiders at your house with WWE Hall of Famer Mr. USA Tony Atlas. Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. after NXT and AEW, join rotating legends on Wrestling Insiders Special Edition. Every Thursday night at 10 p.m. after our NXT and Dynamite review, it's Marty Jannetty's No Holds Barred Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll Journey on Wrestling Insiders Party with Marty. Friday night after SmackDown, don't miss John Cena Sr.'s Wrestling Insiders Fabulous Fridays. Plus, look for classic clips, history videos, bonus live episodes, pay-per-view, watch-alongs, and more. For less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, get early ad-free access to our Wrestling Insider talk shows, our acclaimed studio shoot interview DVD library, and help keep wrestling legends working during the worst of times. Join our growing family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. Expect the unexpected in 2021.